Shabbat Shalom. In this week's Torah portion, Balaam, a foreign prophet, is hired to curse the Israelites by an enemy king. But when this prophet stands on an embankment overlooking their tents, instead of a curse, in wonder he exclaims, "Ma tovu," how good this is. Our sages brought these words from the parchment of Torah into the pages of our prayer book as a reminder. God does not need our prayers. They are a vehicle for us to see the world as it might become and then to help make it so. Every single day, we sing Ma Tovu to encourage ourselves to become prophets of peace. Hopefully, we emerge from the sanctuary doors and move out onto the streets, workplaces, and ordinary avenues of our lives, inspired to transform curse into blessing, even in the most unlikely and unexpected of places. Take, for example, the airport gate. Right? It's like one of the places you don't want to be. You want to get in and get out. We know the airport gate as a place of tension. People jockeying for outlets to charge their phones, jostling for boarding groups, groaning over flight delays. For some, anxiety is even stronger, whether it's the fear of flying or the panic of a lost ID. Add in travel exhaustion and the dreaded last-minute gate change, and you've got shared space that is stressful and often chaotic. A few months ago, I was reminded that the airport gate could also be a spiritual gateway, a threshold between what was and what may be. I learned that we have the ability to transform it into a place of spiritual as well as physical uplift. I was waiting to board a flight with my husband, who channels his airport anxiety into action. Rich stays alert to the announcements and gets online as soon as his group is called. He is also extremely polite and a habitual rule follower. So I became indignant when someone harshly accused him of cutting the line. The nasty tone and the unfair assessment triggered something in me, making a small offense into an enormous injustice that lodged itself in my chest. As we made our way onto the airplane, I couldn't stop muttering. Okay, I was loudly griping. As an aside, Rich wasn't bothered at all. It was all me. I took my seat on the airplane and I continued to vent, when a woman sitting in front of us turned slightly and said quietly, "I know how upsetting that was. I saw that he did nothing wrong, but maybe that person was having a bad day." At first, I was really embarrassed, and then I was really angry with her. I was tempted to say something about minding her own business, but I caught myself. You'll be happy to know the rabbi caught herself. This woman's words to me are the kinds of words I've said to myself and to others many, many times. I really do strive to walk through my days assuming best intent and showing grace. This is probably why I felt so much shame in hearing this message directed to me in public by a stranger. Instead of snapping back, I took a breath. I let her message settle, and I absorbed its truth. I decided to absorb its truth as an invitation instead of an insult. The tangled mass of fury I'd been carrying began to unwind, thread by thread. I felt better, not because justice had been served, but because I hadn't poured more poison into the world. I hadn't traded curse for curse. And that's what this week's Torah portion asks of us. When Balaam speaks blessing instead of curse, it's an extraordinary turn, a moment when the expected narrative, animosity, condemnation, maybe even violence, gets interrupted, and goodness breaks through. Ma tovu. How does he do it? Well, we're told that Balaam was filled with Ruach Elohim, the spirit or the breath of God. But Balaam still had to choose. The presence of holiness within the prophet didn't override his agency. He had to take a breath and allow himself to become a vessel of blessing rather than a channel of curse. Ruach Elohim courses through every human being. How we direct that sacred breath is left to us. This is the message that Moses, our greatest prophet, exhorts us to remember just before he dies, leaving us to enter the promised land without him. Choose life, not death, he proclaims. Blessing, not curse. You can do this. It is not something far from you, not up in the heavens or over the seas. It is close to you, in your mouth and in your heart. In the face of life's challenges, this is easy to forget, which is why it's part of our daily prayers. It's easy to feel helpless and overwhelmed by the curses surrounding us. Hostages still languishing in captivity. Gazan civilians shot while trying to procure food for their children. In our own nation and neighborhood, people are afraid to seek medical care because they fear being snatched off the street by masked government agents. Civic systems break down, leaving communities more vulnerable to natural disasters. Societies are torn apart. Friend groups are torn apart. Families are torn apart by disinformation, by ill will. And yet, there are people who, in the very midst of the deepest suffering, choose blessing. Last year, during a trip to Israel, I met Maoz Inan, a peace activist whose parents were incinerated in their home on October 7th. In the wake of that unimaginable violent loss, he and his siblings made a decision. They would continue their parents' lifelong work for a future of peace, safety, and shared humanity for everyone, Israelis and Palestinians alike. They would channel their grief into preventing others from experiencing such horror. Maoz told our group of clergy that he cries daily, overcome suddenly with grief. But he holds that sorrow privately, sharing it with those close to him. What he amplifies publicly is only what leads to healing and peace. His plea to us, which he asked us to carry to all of you, was direct and simple. Raise your voices only in ways that move towards goodness. Only amplify what builds a shared future. This is Ma Tovu. This is what the prophet Balaam models when he chooses to bless instead of curse. In a moment when he had platform and power, when his words could have unleashed harm, he paused. He let the divine breath within him take the lead. We know from history that this wisdom brings substantive change. In a Zoom course on Gandhi and nonviolence that I've been taking, political science scholar Dr. Dennis Dalton described Gandhi as constantly urging his people to, quote, turn the searchlight inward whenever they felt hatred or rage rise up. Gandhi's goal wasn't to repress anger and pain, but to direct it towards transformation, to move from curse to blessing, resisting evil with love, with control, floating on the flow of God's breath. The word for this practice is known in Sanskrit as satyagraha, which literally means holding on to the force of truth. It was what I unknowingly called upon when I was fuming on the airplane. And that prophet, sitting in front of me, interrupted me with my whirlwind of destructive emotion. She snapped me out of it. Strengthening this power within us is not easy. When we are driving and someone cuts us off, especially if there's a lot of traffic and we have to get somewhere and we've had a bad day, it's hard not to lie on the horn. It's even harder in the disembodied world of social media, which so often beckons the worst within us. The temptation to glance at a message, type a response, and hit send, all without seeing the person on the other end, makes it so much harder to pause and to connect with our Ruach Elohim. Social media trains us to react, not to reflect, to curse, not to bless. Now, we may not be able to stop wars. We may not be able to release hostages, to feed starving communities, or quiet raging battles on the internet. But we can make space. We can become space. We can choose to be vessels of calm and dignity in every interaction, in the grocery store, at the airport, at our Shabbat table, and yes, even online. Righteous indignation may make us feel better in that split second, but de-escalating through silence or even through a few words of kindness actually moves us closer to the peace that we all crave. And it also soothes our own spirits. Our sages added a line from Psalm 69 to conclude the Ma Tovu blessing in our prayer book, emphasizing this tremendous power that we each carry within ourselves. Va'ani tefilati lecha, and I am my prayer to you. Sometimes our prayer is not a song or a spoken word. Our prayer can be our very essence, our every breath. We offer ourselves to God and share Ruach Elohim with the world in the way that we carry ourselves, the tone that animates our speech, our ability to pause and breathe and dissipate our anger. The Sufi Muslim poet Rumi once wrote, "Before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. At the first gate, ask yourself, is it true? At the second gate, ask yourself, is it necessary? And at the third gate, ask yourself, is it kind?" Luckily, our time spent at airport gates is sporadic and occasional, but we face spiritual thresholds every day of our lives, moments of tension that are also rich with possibility. Each one gives us opportunity to pause before we respond, to breathe, to choose blessing over curse, to experience and to enable uplift. I know that there will still be many moments when emotion will have me in its grip. I am going to work hard to practice not giving in to my impulsive response. I am going to try hard to pause at least long enough to answer these 3 questions about the retort that's poised within me, wanting to come out. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? May we practice becoming the prayer that the prophets have been through the generations, being the change we wish to see in the world. Ma tovu, how wonderful is goodness.